you, Secretary. Congratulations again to you.
Thank you.
We've had a chance to talk about a couple of things. I wanted to follow up on Ed Perlmutter's commentary to you earlier, and I share the same concern here. We've been working on sanctions issues now, and our concern is that you inherited basically an agency that is the linchpin of the enforcement, and the budget is going to be inadequate to the dramatic increase in sanctions that we're passing. We've passed, over the last 20 years, I've been engaged in most of these issues, and all of a sudden you've got an exponential increase. And the other part of this that I'm concerned about is workforce retention, not because of the culture in the agency. The problem is that the private sector has a demand for the skill that you're turning out. And so the reality is you're also going to be losing people to the private sector that are willing to pay to get that kind of expertise. And suddenly the amount of expertise necessary to deal with what we've done on Korea and what we're doing on the Iranian missile sanctions and so forth, that is going to be a challenge. You're going to have a situation where you're able to retain skilled staff, and we're going to have to be agile at replacing individuals that do get hired away. And for all of those reasons, the point Ed raised and that I'm raising with you sort of demands a strategy in terms of how you address that.
So I've been very focused on that issue as well. Look, I think I've been incredibly impressed since I heard this before I came to Treasury, but it's really true, by the mission focus of the people who work in the Treasury Department, and in particular on this portfolio. So we have a number of people, in fact, I would say the whole workforce, who comes to work every day inspired and excited about the work that they do, because they're helping to protect the safety and security of our country. At the same time, retention is important. Recruitment is also very important. We have to recruit the best and the brightest. And I have a number of initiatives I'd be happy to come talk to you about.
Well, Hezbollah sanctions are coming as well. And so I wanted to offer a dialogue with you and your staff on this critical issue if we could, because I think it's going to, normally you would consider it sort of overwhelming in terms of the amount of workload that's coming. And that's just not just my concern. My team that helped me write the sanctions bills, we're all concerned about.
Thank you.
About that. I do have a few questions related to anti-money laundering efforts, and I've talked to you before about my concern about the Know Your Customer law, and yet we don't have transparency, and that issue has come up a couple of times today in terms of different ways to deal with that. But the threshold for filing suspicious activity reports was set back in 1996, and the threshold for filing currency transaction reports, that was in 1972. So how were the threshold amounts determined 20 years ago and 45 years ago? And do you think it's time for Congress and Treasury to revisit the thresholds?
I think it's time for us to revisit the regime writ large. I mean, we have to get out of the 1970s and the 1990s and move way past 2017. So I look forward to working with you on that. I think it's a very important effort. I view the financial crimes analysts who are working on these SARs and other reporting mechanisms as really being on the front lines for us.
But I think we have to do it in tandem with the beneficial ownership issue. We've got to get transparency in our system. We're not as bad as Kenya, but we're the second worst from the bottom in terms of being able to monitor this, and it has to be addressed. And we'll talk more about that. How do we encourage the use of new technologies to combat money laundering, and do financial institutions have sufficient legal certainty to be innovative in their efforts? And would you be supportive of further clarification along these lines?
Look, I think innovation is very important. I've had financial institutions come and talk to me about the efforts that they're undertaking to be more innovative, and I think that we need to encourage and promote that activity. So whether we need guidance or different statutory authorities, it's something that we'd have to discuss. But they need to be more sophisticated. They need to have more sophisticated algorithms. And of course, there's a lot of discussion about the use of AI in helping to monitor and detect illicit financing, and we need to stay ahead of it. The criminals are ahead of it. We need to be far ahead of them.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.